Robinson has announced his team and 6 changes was made for their rematch with the Springboks. It almost feels to me like Razor and Rassie saying, I'm going all in, I'm putting in another chip, I'll match you, I'll raise you. I just feel that's what they're doing with these teams. When you look at Rassie's team, he said, I'm playing Oxenchair, Malcolm Marx, Thomas du Toit, exactly the same as last week. Thomas du Toit also not, almost like Tyrell Lomax. Both of them weren't really in great form, although the Groot was really good and Oxenchair was really good. And then, of course, Samasoni Takiao coming off the bench usually is such a good guy to start with. So that's not a bad start. It's a good matchup there. Then we know nothing changes there for the All Blacks. They've stuck to Scott Barrett and Tupu Vai. Why would you want to change anything in those positions? We know Tupu Vai, I never knew this, says I prefer playing lock. He enjoys that part of the game and being able to make calls, and he feels more free there. And I have to say, lately he's just looked better in that position. He kind of just looks a little bit more free. So they will be facing Loot de Jager and Roan Nortje. Now Roan Nortje is still staying in the team, but of course Eben Etzebeth out, which was quite a shocker for many, and Loot de Jager in. But Loot de Jager, a really good experienced player and a good jumper, and I think maybe Rassie just trying to fix those line-out issues. Not that Eben's not good at it, but we know Loot de Jager is a pretty good jumper, and he was so good when he came on second half for the Springboks. So maybe feeling I'm going to give him a go with Roan Nortje. Probably the best 2 jumpers at the moment for the Springboks. So I expect, something better from the Springboks when it comes to lineouts, and I expect something better from the All Blacks when it comes to scrums after that shocking scrum in the last game against the Springboks. Now, the loose forwards, there a few changes, not major changes, but a few changes for the Springboks. They bring in Sia Kulisi moving into 6, where he usually plays. Pieter-Steph du Toit still in the team, and then Jasper Wiese coming back from his suspension for headbutting a guy against Italy. Not a headbutt, head touch really, but he's back in the team, and they will be facing a Simon Parker who showed he was pretty good last week and kind of just stood up there, still new in the mix, but he played so well. It's a big boy, I must say. Came out of nowhere, this guy, and he's been really good since he's come onto the scene. Adi Savia and Wallace Atiti. How good was Wallace Atiti also to disrupt Springbok line out? Adi Savia with their turnover. A really, really good loose trio now. And we have to start saying, Simon Parker seems like he belongs there in that trio. He looks like the right guy. A guy with some more size. And then you've got guys that can really fetchers like a Savia and a Satiti, and also good carriers. So that's matching up against Sia Kulisi, Pieter-Steph du Toit, Jasper Wiese. Now, if you just look at those forwards, it's a juicy matchup, man. It's a juicy matchup. Now, I think for both teams, a few changes in both the All Blacks with Samasoni Takiao coming in. That's pretty much the only forward change there from last week, where South Africa's got Loot de Jager that's come in, and of course Jasper Wiese that's come in. That's the 2 changes that's been made there, and then Sia moving to 6 and Jasper to 8. So very similar in not too many changes in the forwards, but then when we go to the backs, obviously there's big differences between the teams, but both made some changes. We've got Noah Hotham is back in the mix. Now Noah Hotham has become quite a bit more experienced, and Finley Christie actually is more experienced than Noah Hotham, but Noah Hotham first choice for the All Blacks. Now I think the All Blacks and Razor recognizing that Rassie is saying, I'm going to play running rugby, I'm not going to play kicking rugby, and I feel what Razor is saying is, I'll match you, Rassie. I'm not going to play a different game. I'll match you. I'm also going to play a fast game, because I think Noah Hotham, the fact that he's not playing Finley Christie to start with this week, which is more, we know he's a bit of a slower player. He's not slow, but he is a bit more of a tactical kicker. He's a bit slower on, just cleaning out the ball, where Noah Hotham is really quick at that, and he's going to match up well to Kobus Reinach, and that should be an interesting fight there, because Kobus Reinach was then picked, and Grant Williams goes to the bench, and Kobus Reinach will start in that 9 position. Then in 10, Beauden Barrett stays the same, but South Africa has gone for Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu, that was on the bench last week, to start this game. And Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu then dropping Pollard out of the team, so Pollard not playing this week. Now, that 9 and 10, Kobus Reinach, very good from the boot. I think he'll still play some up and unders. He's kind of, for me, more of a kicker than a Grant Williams, but also very dangerous and fast around the fringes and just to clean out the ball. He'll be coming up against Noah Offam, and then a Beauden Barrett versus Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu. Should be interesting. Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu, I think, still got some development to do when it comes to his tactical kicking. We're really going to see this week how much he uses his tactical kicking. Those 50-22s that Pollard kicked and those kind of things, I don't think Feinberg Mngomezulu is quite there yet. But from a skills point of view, now, backhand passes, distributing the ball, up and under type game, that Sasha Feinberg is pretty good at. So it's going to be interesting to see how he can really unlock the backline, because the Springboks' biggest challenge is they haven't been able to unlock the backline and really get it going the way they wanted to be going with the Tony Ball type of style. The last time they were able to do that was way back against Italy and Georgia and earlier the year. They've not been able to do that in this Rugby Championship. For the All Blacks, they'll feel a little bit more confident, unlocking that backline a bit with some backline tries last week with Will Jordan and, of course, Narawa. Now, then looking at your wings there, we're looking at 11 and 14. They've moved Will Jordan from fullback to the wing, and I thought that was super interesting that Will Jordan's been moved into the wing, and I think it's pretty much saying we want to be good under the high ball, because they still suspect the Springboks will, even though they'll run it, they're still going to do some kicking. But that looks a lot better for the All Blacks from a high ball perspective. Leroy Carter, Will Jordan, Damian McKenzie, and Leroy Carter, then the back three. Now, I just mentioned it, basically. Leroy Carter. Again, I feel, there was no reason for Razor to play Leroy Carter this game. He could have played Caleb Clark. He had some options. The other thing that's crazy here is no Rico Ioane. He's been dropped from the team, which we thought we'd never see the day that would happen. Well, it's happened. Leroy Carter's in, and it again feels like the Razor's just saying, you know what, I will double you in chips. I see you putting in Rassie, see you putting in almost a debutant, a very inexperienced player on wing. I'll do the same. Because if you look at the Springboks there, their back three is actually Ethan Hooker. He's also only played like 3 tests, so it's a good matchup against Leroy, although I think it's 14 versus 11, not 11 versus 11. But both teams having a kind of an inexperienced one wing. And then, of course, Will Jordan going to the other wing up against Cheslin Colby playing again. And then Apalele Fassi coming into the Springbok mix, and Damian McKenzie coming into the All Black mix, which is a really, really good and... it's a good matchup, man. It really gets me excited now that I'm looking at both of these teams. And I think this is going to be a very interesting game. I think it's going to be hopefully not as wet, and it's going to be more of a running type game. I mean, I just think Rassie didn't get, Tony Brown over to get them used to this running type game. And I think Rassie kind of, from what I could see from this team, although I don't always think it might be the right call, we will see this weekend if it will be. I think Rassie is saying, you know what, I did all of this to be able to run against the All Blacks and run them and play them. I've tried the whole playing it old school Springbok up and under tight game. It didn't work out for me. This week I'm just going to roll the dice and run with the All Blacks. Kind of play fire with fire. Let's all both play offload running type games. Let's see what Tony Brown has done, if he's done enough for the Springbok team to do it. That's what I think is happening here. That's honestly what I'm thinking what's happening here with this team, with the Springboks. Now, where Razor has again left the team exactly the same, and I thought he might. He doesn't want to change that midfield. He feels Billy Proctor belongs there. He's got Jordie Barrett and Billy Proctor there still. Jordie was okay last week, but he's been a bit quiet in his last few games. And Billy Proctor's also not, they do their work, but I mean, we know how influential Jordie can be. It feels like he's a little bit limited sometimes in that 12 position. But keeping those two guys, but coming up against two totally different players. There's no Damian Delilindi and no Krill. This is where I think Rassie took the biggest gamble. And this is where I'm a little bit concerned. I'm not so concerned about Kanan Moody on 13. He's played some 13 against other teams previous years, Australia. I don't know if he's played 13 against the All Blacks. I don't think so. But, Moody is a pretty good 13. It's just Damian Willems has not played a lot of 12. And my only concern is those guys, if you look at that, Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu at 10, Damian Willems and Kanan Moody are all three very unpredictable, expansive type players. It looks amazing when three of those players can play in cohesion. But usually if you put three players that's like that, let's say three Quade Coopers next to each other, or three Sonny Bill Williams type players next to each other, sometimes it doesn't work because everyone wants to do everything. And sometimes you don't need that in a backline. You need some guys that's less razzle-dazzle than others. And that's my only concern, that it's too much razzle-dazzle. But we'll only see on the weekend. We will learn, because that's, I think, where there might be a challenge. Then, of course, also the other thing that's a concern for me from a Springbok perspective is just their defence. They fell apart a little bit with that rush D against Australia when, they started being exposed behind them with that space behind them. How good are they going to be able to manage that back? I just still feel that when I'm looking Leroy Carter, Will Jordan and Damian McKenzie, except for Leroy Carter, you got two really good guys under the high ball. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a very interesting fight. Guys, just going through the reserves then quickly. Brodie McAllister then coming in as the second hooker into the team, also new into the team. For South Africa, they've brought in Marnus van der Merwe. He'll be playing hooker, specialised. Then we've got Tamati Williams, the prop from the bench. For South Africa, Jan Hendrik Wessels from the bench. Had a pretty good game last week. Wilco Louw, which had a smashing game, that will be going up against Fletcher Newell again. Man, Wilco Louw, and when you guys look at that scrum, I know the scrum is 8 guys, but let me tell you, Wilco Louw has got a big reason that the scrum looks so good in the second half. He's been one of these phenomenons in rugby. Springboks just seem to always produce these type of props, because Oxenchair is also one of them starting for the Springboks. Wilco Louw, all the games in this rugby championship he's come off the bench have had huge impact. Him again up against Fletcher Newell. I'm curious to see. Tamati Williams was struggling against him. It was Tamati struggling against Wilco Louw. And see how they're going to match up from that bench. Jan Hendrik Wessels up against Tamati Williams, because the Springboks did pretty well on those scrums. But I think this week the All Blacks have got to be better there. I think the Springboks will want to be better in their lineouts. That's where both teams need to work. Then we've got another, it's a really, really good matchup between Fabian Holland, which has been really good since he's come into the scene for the All Blacks, versus RG Snyman. Now, you can't tell me that's not a great matchup. The Viking versus the Dutchman. What more can you want than that? And then, of course, we've got Duplessis Kerevi and Kwagga Smith. We've spoken about these two guys. Also a great matchup between those two. It should be really good. And it's nice that I can compare it like this, because we're going 5-3 again. And this team shouts to me from the Springboks again, we still want to run it. Then we've got Grant Williams matching up to a Finlay Christie. Interesting again, because Grant Williams will be more of a quicker cleaner and very fast looking for space. Finlay Christie will be a little bit slower down a little bit, but then look for those kicks. So again, a very good matchup. Then Of course, another interesting one is Ruben Love has been brought back into the team and given a go. That's also interesting to see him back, and he'll be up against Amali Libok. I mean, all these matchups just seem like it almost seemed like Razor was sitting this week and he's like, okay, Rassi, you put this guy up. Who do we have that's similar that I think can challenge him? I'm putting this guy up. I mean, Amani Labok and Ruben Love should be a very interesting matchup. And then, of course, Andre Estres, and he's a big boy, will come up against Quinta Pai. So, just such a good matchup from head to head, from start to finish. Great matchup.
Combinations, guys that played well last week, and a little bit of continuity, but also some skill sets for this weekend. Obviously,
that's exactly what I said, guys, and that's what Razor's saying here, is that he was looking for that combination with the guys that's played well to keep them, but also bring in some new guys.
Play on the other wing, which gives us really good backfield coverage, and we know that it's going to come again.
It's going to come again. He's talking about the up and under, as he said. It's coming again, so we'll see how it goes, but he's definitely prepared for the up and under game also.
Aerial battle, and it's a great balance, and yeah, look, he's about that big, and he's fast, and he's got some great hops for and
we gotta love Razor Robertson. He's such an expressive guy. He's just that big. But Leroy Carter, of course, that's the thing, is he comes with pace. He comes from the sevens background. You know, it's kind of like Corey Toole that's done that within the Wallabies. I think he's also trying to experiment and see how Leroy Carter is going to do. And yeah, it's going to be so interesting for me with a Leroy Carter and a Ethan Hooker both coming into the team, very kind of new. In a big match like this, and to see how each one of them perform.
Play with a little bit more freedom with that one out of the way.
They've beaten, well, sorry, South Africans beaten us twice. The last time, 2 times we've played here, so that's another record you've got to be mindful of.
So, you know, again, Razor just showing respect there and saying, you know, the question was from Matthew Piers if you can play with freedom this week. And Razor saying, not quite. You've beaten us the last 2 times at Wellington. So, still acknowledging that, you know, it is a ground where the All Blacks have not been really good, is in Wellington.
Focusing on yourselves, were you surprised at the number of changes that the Springboks have made in their back division?
Surprised by Russie. I think it's the first thing. You don't get surprised by him yet.
That's so funny. That's so true. Surprised by us, you can never be. But he was. Razor was definitely surprised, because I think he was still busy with a conference, and then the next thing you heard that the Springboks team had been announced.
You wait what comes out, and you know he's picked that team to win it. You know they've picked those teams for those players for their strengths. So we're aware of their strengths. And then you go back to your own, you know, and what's going to be required.
And I think that's exactly what I said. You know, he's like, you know, Rassi, you raised me here. It's okay. I'll look at my own and I raise you there. And that's how it feels to me. Like 2 guys playing, you know, poker or something and raising each other for these stakes.
Can you explain the decision to drop Rico from the 23?
We've given another player an opportunity. My job's to build depth in the team, and it's Leroy's chance.
I think good answer there. I think, but you got to say that you know, Razor has been sticking to Iohane for very long, so it was about time. And I think Razor also realizing the new guys that he's brought in has just stepped up so much. So maybe he needs to. Definitely from a backline point of view, I think the All Blacks lack new talent. They seem to be bringing them in big time in the forwards, but on the backline, they're not bringing them in quick enough. So maybe this is also, like they say, Rassi saying there's a new era for the Springboks. That's how it looks by his indications of his teams that he's picking. Well, I think maybe Razor's doing exactly the same. There's so many similarities for me between these 2 coaches, more than we think, because they're both just kind of cowboys. They're both kind of cowboy type. Well, they'll take any risk. They like the risk-reward type game.
With Noah fit, what was the reason for him coming in? Because Finley had a good game last weekend.
Yeah, Noah's a great athlete, and he's come back in good condition. Would be the best thing for him just to start this testing with with Finn to finish.
Was Leroy on the radar?
Well, the thing, it makes sense in a way if you've got Finley Christie coming off the bench, because then you can. He's been great coming off the bench before previous years for the All Blacks, because that experience sometimes counts if the game is really, really tight, to have some experienced players on.
I know on Saturday night you said Jason Ryan will have some drills for the scrums. How have the few days of training transpired around the scrum area?
Oh, there's a technical element, and there's also a little bit of a mindset element that we've looked into. And then obviously you look at to the ref as well, the interpretation of it. So we've done our homework on it and had a good week.
So it's interesting because the Springboks had a lot to question around the ref, and some teams, the way it was interpreted, who won the scrums. A lot of them, the Springboks felt, and Springbok supporters felt they'd won, but clearly you could see it was the stronger scrummaging team overall in the whole game. I know even the Groot wasn't happy with some decisions, but I think that's the thing. The ref kind of called it both ways. Sometimes weren't correct, but I think there's been a lot of feedback from the All Blacks and the Springboks this week because both weren't happy, and we should see better scrums. I saw Jason Ryan said, never again is this going to happen. He's very much like, for me, like the Springboks forward coaches, like a Don Heeman. They wear so much pride on their sleeves, or whatever you can call it, that they cannot take it when a scrum goes backwards like that. So it's going to be a different story this week. I think it's going to be some awesome clashes in the scrums.
Changes they've made, though, you'd have to be thinking that they've got a lot more variety and potential if they want to use that.
Yeah, the skill set's changed. Obviously, Kelly going probably a bit more balance to the game, which they can keep the ball in hand and trust the speed and their ethics that they've picked. So you prepare for both, and look, forecast looks pretty good, but we'll just check it day to day here in Wellington.
And we can see there what Razor's saying. When he's saying he prepares for both, he's basically saying he's preparing for the way that the Springboks played in that first game, which was the up and under, tighter game, close channel balls, smashing it up, at times trying to run it, but the weather forecast didn't help the Springboks, and he's saying this week it's looking better, but although we can never say New Zealand. But what he's saying is we're also preparing for them to maybe play more expansive, more of Tony Brown style game, and they're also preparing for that. But I still believe that the Springboks need to get the mix. It shouldn't be either or. To me, it's like there shouldn't be an old DNA Springbok team and a new DNA Springbok team. There shouldn't be an old way of playing and a new way of playing. It should be a mix. And that's why it forces teams like the All Blacks having to prepare for both, because they don't know what will come. But if the Springboks can start playing both, they make themselves so much more of a harder team to beat if they can play both and switch between them.
Caleb's just come back into environment for a long time out. Look, he's had a couple of great games and did everything he needs to. Turned up on late on Monday, and we just felt the best thing for him is just get his feet underneath him and have a good training week. And obviously Leicester's played a lot of midfield over in Toulon, and we just felt the balance for this week as someone that's been in with the group for a long period of time. And
it's clear that Razor's here indicating that he's still sticking to Proctor with Jordie Barrett, because if he's talking that from France, Leicester Fanganuku came back playing a lot of midfield. He could have easily tried Leicester Fanganuku in that middle midfield, but I think he's feeling it's too much of a risk, and he doesn't want to change that centre pair. That's why I am a little bit stressed with the Springboks changing their centre pairs so much, because it's such a risky place to be changing players. But I mean, you've got to think that Leicester Fanganuku is going to be a force to be reckoned with at centre for the All Blacks, and they kind of need a good, strong carrier. And of course, Caleb Clark would have been a great choice. He might regret it if the All Blacks lose this game. They might look back and say, hindsight, we should have taken Caleb Clark rather. But he's really matching with Rassie, saying you playing a debutant on the wings, I'm playing a debutant on the wings, which is pretty cool and gutsy.
On the pitch, and also allowed us, Will Jordan to play a little bit differently. So And obviously with Ruben coming off the bench gives us a really good balance. We still think it'll be an aerial game, but we've still got a lot of speed and finishes, which South Africa have as well. So it's a good balance for us.
Yeah, and I think that's what I said. I think they still definitely prepared for a kicking game, and that's why they're bringing D-Mac in. Otherwise, they would have kept Will Jordan on the fullback. But bringing D-Mac in and moving Will Jordan again. But Will Jordan is just so naturally a wing. You saw when he scored the weekend on versus the Springboks the last weekend. He just slots back into that wing role so easily. So guys, that's pretty much my reaction. If you enjoyed my reaction to this, please hit that subscribe button below. Yeah. And I'll catch you in the next one. It's getting closer and I am super excited. I'll try and have 1 or 2 more videos, hopefully, if I've got time for this build up for the Saturday. But man, I am excited about this one. I think this one brings a totally different aspect to it, to what the last one did, and that's what's making it exciting. Different selections, new guys in both teams, and it should be super awesome clash. And I think we're going to see some more running rugby, which we all want to see. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Cheers guys, bye.